Welcome everyone, I'm Sherold Barr and I'm thrilled today to welcome my guest. Dr. Rick Hanson is a neuropsychologist. He's author of Buddha's Brain, the practical neuroscience of love, happiness, and wisdom. And I've invited Rick back to talk to us today about fear and how we're wired for fear, and also about service and giving. Welcome, Rick.
My pleasure. It's really great to be here. And
how are we wired for service, to give to others? When we're giving our time to something bigger than ourselves, there's a lot of research out there about that. So do you have anything you want to say about wiring and happiness and service?
Oh, sure. There's been a radical revision, actually, in the last dozen years or so of the scientific view of human nature based on a tremendous amount of excellent research on, under the general heading of the social brain theory. The idea that in terms of biological evolution alone, I'm not speaking here of spiritual evolution or anything like that, just kind of hardcore Darwinian processes, that the so-called reproductive advantages, which are the engine of biological evolution, the reproductive advantages of love, broadly defined, for example, compassion, language, bonding, parent-child bonding, mate bonding, village it takes to raise a child bonding, cooperative planning, altruism, generosity, kindness, etc., etc., etc. That the advantages of that as we evolved were so great that they really drove the evolution of the brain. So broadly defined, love is stitched into human DNA. And you can see countless examples of that in everyday life. We tend to pay attention to examples of aggression and conflict, jealousy and war because they're so prominent. But those prominent examples, much like a storm cloud, appear in contrast to a vast and spacious sky of, ordinary human cooperation and kindness. So this very much is our tendency. I think that it's important to appreciate in the traditional American, Native American teaching that we have two wolves in our heart, one of love and one of hate. And it's important to appreciate the presence of aggression in the human heart and the importance of restraining and not feeding that particular wolf of hate. But that said, the wolf of love is naturally much bigger and stronger than the wolf of hate. And in particular, needs good feeding and needs unleashing and support to really come to its full power, and yet it has tremendously more potential than the wolf of hate. And if I could say in particular, while the wolf of love is certainly present in males, and I'm going to be generalizing here about gender, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm talking about the average, basically, of groups, which is a wide range of individual difference and a lot of overlap between these two distributions, human males and human females. That said, while males are very oriented around cooperation, think of classic examples of males cooperating in sports or in warfare or in business. That said, women in particular do seem to be particularly oriented around cooperative engagement, rooted initially in mother-child bonding and then in mating. Be reductionistic, but to appreciate that hormones like oxytocin play a very significant role. It's interesting, for example, I just read a recent study that shows that in mice, and we can probably generalize to humans about this, that in terms of reacting to something that's concerning or problematic or potentially threatening, in other words, now we're in the territory of fear, our topic here, that there are two kind of countervailing tendencies inside mammals. One is to freeze and just go still, because that's adaptive under some conditions. But there's also another response, which is to rev up and either fight or flee, or strongly protect. And when oxytocin is present, as it is among women when they're raising children, and also present in people that themselves are on the receiving end of good nurturing, when oxytocin is present, it inhibits the freezing response and allows the more active and adaptive and energized and engaged, fighting, fleeing, protecting response to occur, so that females can protect their young, and people who are well nurtured don't just freeze, based on something that's happened, but can deal with it in a more adaptive and complex and active way.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
That's fascinating. I love that. I haven't heard that before.
It's new science.
I love that.
Thing you probably have heard of is Shelley Taylor at UCLA, her theory of tend and befriend, how women, I think it's Shelley Taylor at UCLA, based on oxytocin and also based on culture, under challenge or stress, women tend to move toward a tending behavior where they protect the young and they protect others, including their male mates. If they have a male mate rather than a female mate, let's say, or a female mate, they protect their mates. And also, they tend to reach out to others to befriend them to gather forces. Amazing. That's why, to quote Jung, Carl Jung, who in my book is the greatest psychologist of all time. He technically
in my book too. I'm a closet Jungian.
I give him the nod ahead of Freud even. I think.
Me too.
He was once asked toward the end of his life in the early 50s, having lived through 2 world wars at that point, and as well as a lot of other trouble, what was wrong with the world these days? And he said that to him, what was most wrong with the world these days, the root issue, I believe his phrase was the denial of the feminine.
Wow.
Or the suppression or under-resourcing of the feminine as a broad general principle. The feminine present, of course, in females as well as in males. Most present, of course, in females. And I think about the ways in which women, as a class, rarely wage war. I mean, yes, we have examples of people like, Margaret Thatcher in England, and then we have the Prime Minister in Israel, his name escapes me, who was involved in war, and there's a place for that. But generally speaking, women tend to take a longer view. They're more focused on, nurturance, infrastructure. They tend to be less caught up in these sort of symbolic causes that lead to war. And as a guy whose first book was about the importance of taking care of mothers over the long term, as the most highly leveraged investment I think this planet could ever make. In a single generation, if we invested deeply in mothers, I think we could make this world a dramatically better place.
That's great.
As the guy who did that, Penguin published it in 2002. It's called Mother Nurture. I'm a major fan of letting women run the show. If the human species on the planet could take a vote tonight about letting women run the show for the next generation, I'd say yes.
I'd be right here with you, and I think that's
guys. I think there are a lot of women that are
no,
please don't go there. And I think there are, I like guys. I'm a guy.
I don't think there would be poverty. I don't think there would be as many problems as we have.
I don't want to be foolish or utopian about it, but that's
I agree with you. I think there's
men have been in charge for a long time, and
how's it working for us, as Dr. Phil would say. Not so good. Anyway, thank you for that. And I wanted to just ask you about your book that's coming out. Tell us about, because you've written Buddha's Brain, and that's been wildly successful. That really has been. And you've been on YouTube. I saw you were down at Google as one of their new authors. How can we get it? That kind of thing.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll wrap on this point. I try not to do too much promotion. So I'm a big believer in the power of practice. What I mean by that is the idea that based on what's called experience-dependent neuroplasticity, the finding that you can use your mind alone to gradually change your brain and therefore your mind and therefore your life for the better. All right? How do we do that? We do it by lots of little things that add up. So as a big fan of doing little practices of various kinds and someone who's really reaped the rewards in his own life of doing that, starting out as an incredibly neurotic, young man, leaving home. I started doing this newsletter called Just One Thing, because life's so busy these days, it helps to just have one thing at a time to focus on for a day or a week or even longer. And those little practices were astonishingly successful. They really blew me away, actually, how successful they were. So a book has emerged out of it. It's called Just One Thing. developing a Buddha brain one simple practice at a time. I'm actually very pleased about it. It's
Great.
heartfelt, it's soulful, it's very accessible.
Great.
The practices are all very short, very readable, and amenable to really anybody. You don't need any kind of background whatsoever in neuroscience. Their practices are infused a little bit with my own background in contemplative practice, but it's really, it's total Midwest America.
Perfect.
That for me is what it's really about.
Well, I think that's what we need, and I think we just have to start with these small steps. So thank you so much.
Great, Sherold, and thank you for what you're doing. It's a great service.
I'm raising money for women.
Great, Sherold.
Thank you so much.